Come on, admit it. You may be scared of her, but you still love her. Here's Susie Essman, who plays Susie Green on Curb. I promise not to make this too painful.
Okay, just one question before we start.
Of course.
Do I have to be clean?
No, not at all. I would be disappointed if you were.
Okay, well, I mean, I generally am. It's a character I play, but just checking before you record.
Okay. It occurred to me that because there's not a script, you had a lot of license in terms of creating Susie Green. And I was wondering how much input you got from Larry and how much of it was just your own impressionistic mind.
You know, the interesting thing about when I think about Susie Green, and God, I've been playing her for 17 years now, right?
Right.
Larry and I have never in all this time had a discussion about the character. We've never had a discussion about her. He wrote the part. The reason he cast me is he had this scene in season 1 called The Wire, where a Fresh Air Fund kid comes to Jeff's house and robs them blind. You know, Jeff brings the kid in. It's a good deed, and the kid robs him blind, and Jeff's wife then goes crazy on him. So that was the scene he had in mind when he hired me. And I've known Larry since, 1986. You know, he knows my stand-up. And he saw me on the Jerry Stiller Friars roast that was on Comedy Central. You know, it's a roast. I was completely filthy. That's what you're supposed to be on a roast. So it was like ding, ding, ding moment for him where he thought, oh, Susie would be perfect for this part. And he called me and he gave me the part. And the only direction he gave to me was, I want you to rip Jeff a new asshole. And I thought, well, I've had boyfriends. I could do that, you know. I've been in relationships before. I have experience with this. So in that scene, I was cursing Jeff out, and, you know, and he kept up pulling me over and saying, go further. And I thought I was going pretty far, and it was like, go further, go further. And this was like, and actually Larry Charles was directing that episode. This was several takes, and finally Larry David pulls me over and he goes, I want you to make fun of Jeff's fat. And I said, Larry, I don't want to do that. I don't like to make fun of people's physical, you know, problems. And Jeff has an eating issue, and that's mean, and I don't want to do it. He's like, just go for it. Just go for it. He knows you're only kidding. He knows you're acting. Just do it. So I did it, and that was the first time I called him a fat fuck, I think. You know, and then, like, the genie was out of the bottle, and you know, the rest is herstory. But that, I think, was the only Susie Green direction I ever got from Larry in terms of character. We never discussed the character. We had kind of, I would call it a dialogue of the unconscious, you know, where I kind of got what he wanted and gave it to him, and he got what I was doing and wrote more towards what I was doing. And it was just this amazing collaboration that we've had all these years that we've never actually spoken about.
So then the question is, how did you navigate your way to Susie Green? Because it seems like from people who know you and from just hearing you in interviews and things, you're not Susie Green.
No, I'm not Susie Green.
By far. So how did you find her?
Well, you know, it was a process, and I don't think I fully found her until season 2. I mean, I had that scene in season 1 where, you know, I created this crazy screaming and yelling woman. But there was a few things. Number one, I never want to play myself. I'm with myself 24/7. It's not that interesting to me. I always want to play somebody different than me, you know. And so I'm not the kind of actress that gives it that much thought. It's more of a visceral, emotional connection that I get. And I just had this idea of this character. Well, first of all, the house, you know, we've had so many houses, Jeff and I, as has had Larry, but the house that had the first season, the way that it was decorated, it was this very modern house with this very kind of leather and chrome kind of a look. And the way that it was decorated just gave me this idea in my head about who she was. So that was just happenstance. You know,
that's
the
interesting.
Locations happened to pick that house, and then it just kind of gave me an idea about who the character was. And how she dressed was a big part of that. You know, I just got this idea of how she dresses and how she decorates, and that I wanted her to be this kind of character that is completely reactive. You know, doesn't analyze anything the way that I do personally. You know, I analyze I'm a comic. I look at everything from every which way that I possibly can, and I'm always overanalyzing. And Susie Green's completely reactive. She has an emotion. She always believes she's completely right. She never second guesses herself. It's just that she just started to develop in my head from different women I've known throughout my life that I've thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to just be that secure and sure of yourself and your opinions that you never, ever have any guilt or question anything?
Her sense of conviction is unbelievable, and the confidence in her, she never equivocates.
There were girls that I knew in high school that were like that, and I was like, wow, what is that like to be that way? Because I was the opposite. I was always, every little thing was 10,000 different analytic questions in my head. And then the way that she dressed, I just had this idea that I wanted her to dress in this completely outrageous way, but completely secure in it. She's totally secure that she has the greatest taste in the whole world. And I thought she would dress kind of like the Russian immigrant women in Brighton Beach in Brooklyn. you know that look?
Right.
And I remember our wardrobe designer, the first season, Wendy, she said, well, where am I going to find clothes like that? Because I had this idea. And I said, the back room at Lohman's. And she had never even heard of Lohman's. So we did a field trip. So it's just, and then she just kind of developed. And then my relationship with Larry just kind of developed because he'd write all these scenes where I'm kicking him out of the house and I hate him and I'm yelling and screaming at him. And then the next episode I'd be, hey, Larry, want to come to dinner? So we kind of developed this almost like siblings where you always forgive. And Susie, by the way, is very, very loyal even to Larry, even though he's always pushing her buttons. She would still defend Larry to the death,
I love when she just doesn't, like, for instance, no tour for you. I mean, after he refuses the tour.
I'm done. There's no discussion. You had your opening. See, that's what she's like. I'd feel horrible and I'd feel guilty and whatever. But she's just that's why it's so much fun to play her.
Right. Well, I think the interesting thing for me, though, is that you've been able to create this character that if you knew her or if somebody else was possibly playing her, you may not like her, but when they drive up in the doll episode and you're standing there and that music comes on, we love you. How can somebody that caustic, in a way, engender such affection? That, to me, is like the real trifecta here.
I have a couple of theories about it. First of all, from my point of view, from Susie Green's point of view, Larry and Jeff are always provoking her. She's not just screaming and shouting over nothing. In that scene you're talking about, he steals her daughter's doll's head.
Right. Right.
He gets her kid drunk and steals her dog. Right. He gets us kicked out of the country club. He doesn't take a house tour. It's always provoked. She's not just walking around. And usually, you see Susie's fine, and then Larry does something to provoke her, and she's like, 0 to 60 in her acceleration. But it's always provoked. That's number one. Number two, I think people feel their connection to, and you would be surprised how many men come up to me all the time and say to me, oh, my wife is exactly like you, and they say it like they're proud, number one. And then women come up to me all the time and say, I'm exactly like you. So I find that amusing, and they're proud of it. But I think what people are responding, especially women, what they're responding to in Susie, and what I think men are responding to is the fact that, she's angry, but she's not vicious. She'll always go after yelling and screaming at Larry, but it's never mean, really. It's more reactive because he provoked her.
Well, that was certainly true in Palestinian Chicken. I thought you had your reasons for going after him, and you went deep.
In almost every scene, if you take it apart, I do. So she's not vicious. And I think that what women respond to, or maybe men too, is, people think that it's the cursing and the fucks and all that, but I don't think that's what it is. I think it's Susie's complete and total comfort with her anger that women respond to about her. Because we're all brought up that, we got to be ladylike and nice and not angry and it's not pretty and all that kind of stuff. And Susie is so completely comfortable with her anger that I think it's liberating for people to see.
And do you feel like men are intimidated by Susie Green, or do you think that there's a part of them that really relishes the idea that there's a tough woman that is in their world?
Both. When I first met my husband, he had never seen Curb, so I was very happy about that. Because he got to know me before he ran the other way. but years ago on my website, I had a contact. When I first put my website up, I had a contact thing on it, and I was getting these crazy S&M guys contacting me, just really weird, sexually perverse, and wanting me to like tie them up and scream at them. So I got rid of the contact because it was gross.
Right. There was probably more money in that
really
than the show, though.
Aspect of Susie.
Do you think your work and your background as a comic, though, has informed your ability to do the show so well? Because I don't think people appreciate the fact that there really isn't a script. And so much is happening while you're on your feet right there.
Well, yeah. I mean, definitely being a comic. And so many of us are comics. I mean, Cheryl is really the only one who's part of the regular cast. But she was in the Groundlings for so many years. And so she did a lot of improv. But, I see there's a lot of regular actors who come on and are terrific at improvising, but some not so much, Yet comics, that's what we do. I mean, you work in clubs as much as I've worked in clubs over the years, and you have to improvise. But it's also, to me, it's also an acting thing. I was in an improv group many years ago at the Comic Strip in New York, and the main thing you learn in improv is listen and respond. So the main thing in improv is you really have to listen. And a lot of actors, and good actors always have to listen, but a lot of actors don't. They're just waiting to get their lines out. And you can't do that in improv because you have to hear what somebody says, because the line that you had in mind might not be appropriate to the response.
Parachute sheets are the softest and most comfortable sheets you'll ever own. And why is that? Well, simply put, it's because they're made from the very best fabrics. Parachute sheets have a clean, minimalistic style that come in neutral colors, so they work perfect in any bedroom. And the best part of Parachute is that their sheets get softer with time. Plus, if you're a person who wants to make an impact on the world, and frankly, who doesn't, then Parachute is the company for you. They've partnered with the United Nations Foundation to donate malaria prevention bed nets, and they've already donated 16,000 so far. Here's another great part of the story. Parachute offers a 60-night trial. So if you don't love your sheets, you just send them back, no questions asked. Now, if you're wondering how that makes a positive impact on the world, well, all returns are donated to Habitat for Humanity, and that's a great cause. So don't wait. Visit parachutehome.com/origins for free shipping and returns. Again, that's parachutehome.com/origins for free shipping and returns. It doesn't get any easier. It's time to get better sleep with Parachute. What have you learned from Larry and from doing Curb about either your own work or about comedy? I mean, clearly you had a deep background beforehand, but has there been something that's developed over the seasons?
I haven't learned anything about stand-up, really, but I've learned about comedic acting. The reason why I love working with Larry so much, there's many reasons, but one of the main reasons as a comedic actress that I love working with Larry is I never, ever think about being funny, ever. I never have to think about it because I so trust him. His sense of story is that to me is, he's got many aspects of his genius, but I think that might be the biggest part of his genius is his sense of story. His sense of story is just so brilliant. And if you take apart the outlines, you can't even, it's transcendent. You can't even figure out how he gets there, is how good it is. So I know the way that he sets something up that it's going to be funny, and I don't even have to think about it. I could just be in character and play the character and play the relationships and play my intent without having to make it funny. And that's been the greatest, for me as an actress, the greatest part of Curb. It ends up being funny because that's how it's set up. I mean, it's a true situation comedy because it's not in the dialogue, it's in the situation. And so that to me is what I've learned is not trying to make something funny, to just be in the moment and be in character. And if you're true to the character and it's set up correctly, it's going to be funny.
I think one of the things in those situations, though, that also helps things so much is Jeff's ability to, I don't want to say deal with you, but he has a loyalty to you too. In fact, when we were talking earlier about the tour, he says to Larry later on, you should have taken the tour.
Right. Well, he knows how to appease his wife.
Right. But I mean, that sense of loyalty, because he doesn't, I mean, part of the genius of Jeff's character, right, is he's not fighting back. He doesn't even dare go toe-to-toe with you.
Right.
That would be a fool's errand. So I think that it's a really refreshing, interesting dynamic to see a woman so powerful. And Jeff is not threatened by it. In fact, he sometimes embraces it, even when you guys were separated on the show.
But I love in a scene where Larry will just say to him, "You poor bastard." He'll say something like, "You know what people say behind your back? They say that poor bastard." But Jim, we all know relationships like that. We've seen them, and you walk away thinking, why are they together? But, people have arrangements that work for them in marriage and long-term marriages when they're married forever and they got kids, and something works for them, and we can't always, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Who knows?
But does Susie love Jeff?
Yes, she loves Jeff, even though she can't stand him.
Well,
but she loves Larry. Her main loyalty, though, is to Sammy. In so many episodes where she's going, jumping down Larry's throat, it's because he did something to Sammy. She's fiercely loyal to her child.
She's the ultimate tiger mom.
Yeah. I think so. And blind to her kid as well. But she thinks she's the most talented and the most all of that stuff. And she's completely blind to her own children.
When you wake up in the morning and you're going to the set of Curb and you're thinking about your day ahead, are you processing potential things in your mind, or you really let it happen when you're...
No, I don't even... Half the time I don't even know what we're doing. I've read the outlines ahead of time, but when I get to set, I'm not really sure what we're doing that day, unless it's something, sometimes he just throws stuff at me, like now I got to know sign language, or now I got to, things like that. Then I have to focus on it if it's a task that I'm unfamiliar with. But if it's just a normal, regular scene, I don't even think about it. A lot of times we'll be on set and, we're talking about the Yankees or some such thing. And then they'll say action, and Jeff and Larry and I will look at each other like, what's the scene again? We don't even know. And then we'll ask the AD, and he'll say, oh, it's this. Oh, okay, fine, let's go. We'll do it. We don't think about it ahead of time at all. Unless, again, there's something specific physically I have to do or something like that.
Was there a scene that was more particularly challenging than any other, or that jumps out in your mind as something that you did extra takes because maybe it didn't come right away, or you wanted it to be a certain way and you kept on thinking about it or wanting to do it again?
No. The only scene that I think I ever pre-planned what I was going to say, and there was a reason for that, was the restaurant opening, where everybody's cursing and Paul Sand plays the Tourette's chef. And I walk in while they're all in the middle of, all this crazy cursing, and Cheryl says something, goddamn son of a bitch, something like that, and I think she's talking to me. So I actually planned my response, which is one of my most famous quotes, "Fuck you, you car wash cunt, I had a dental appointment." But I actually pre-planned that, because I knew I was just walking. It wasn't like a usual scene. I knew I was walking in, saying something, and leaving.
Right.
It wasn't like a normal scene where you're listening and talking. And I knew that Cheryl was going to say ahead of time,
right,
more or less. I knew that she was just going to be cursing, and I was going to think it was at me. I didn't know exactly what she was going to say. So that was one of the more planned moments. But I think that's the only time I've ever pre-planned what I'm going to say. Larry generally doesn't let any of the guest stars or anybody read the outlines for that very reason. He doesn't want them pre-planning, because then it sounds like bad sitcom lines. And he wants them to show up on set, and he'll tell them what the scene is about, and he wants them to just be in the moment.
Are you ready to make your next move? Well, Squarespace wants to be with you when you do. Squarespace gives people a powerful and beautiful online platform from which to make their next move known to the world. With Squarespace, people can lock down their ideas with a unique domain, create a website to launch their idea, a portfolio to get their project out there, and an online store to officially open for business. There's so much that Squarespace can do for you. So what are you waiting for? Make your next move with Squarespace. Create a beautiful website or online store with award-winning templates. There's nothing to install, patch, or upgrade, ever. And Squarespace offers award-winning 24/7 customer support with fully transparent and simple to execute setup. Squarespace is used by a wide range of creatives, people, and businesses. Use offer code ORIGINS for 10% off your first purchase of a website and domain. That's offer code ORIGINS. And make your next move with Squarespace. At the beginning of the first season, if you had gone to a dinner party or just out to dinner one night with your friends and they say, so you're doing this series, what do you think is going to happen with it? What were you thinking in your head? Did you feel like at the beginning that it was going to be...
No.
Right.
No. It was such this, first of all, I was like getting day scale. I was hired by the day. I wasn't a regular. I was just hired, for whatever episodes I got paid for it. I was getting scale for like the first 3 seasons, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just this slapdash operation. We had no budget. We had nothing. We didn't have, the first few seasons, we didn't have trailers. We didn't have a makeup trailer. We didn't have our own dressing room trailers. We all just were like, running around whatever house we were in, finding a bathroom and changing and getting makeup done in the half dark and, that kind of stuff. It was such a low budget operation. And then finally, I think season 3 or 4, we got one trailer that we all shared, that all the actors, Cheryl, Larry, Jeff, me, we all shared the one trailer together. And then I think after a SAG, whatever it was, came in and said we had to get trailers. But we kind of liked it when it was like that. It was just this kind of, it was really this I've got a barn, let's put on a show kind of feeling.
But you had no idea that it was going to be
none.
A hit.
And it wasn't until I would say season 3, anecdotally, that I would see people stopping me on the street and getting response. So the first couple of seasons, we were really under the radar, which, of course, if it wasn't HBO, it would have been canceled. If it was network, but this show never would have been on network, so that's not even accurate. And, of course, after every single season, Larry would say, that's it, I'm not doing another one.
Right. I was actually going to ask you about that because that kind of uncertainty is sometimes difficult for people to deal with.
Luckily, being a comic, I always could work. Being an actress is so hard because you just waiting around for somebody to give you a job, But being a comic, I always worked, and I was making more money because of my visibility on the show, and I got other things because of the show. But I wasn't a series regular. I was a guest star until, what did we just finish, season 9? Until either 7 or 8, I was a guest star. I didn't have any security whatsoever.
Wow. What was it like when people started coming up to you in the street? I mean, obviously people knew you from comedy, but when people started coming up to you in the street in season 3 and talking about you and your character and fans like that?
Most bizarre thing is they would just, beg me to tell them to go fuck themselves. I'd be in the middle of Broadway at Fairway looking at produce, and they're just shoving phones in my face. It's my husband, call him a fat fuck, that kind of thing. So that's just bizarre. That it's like this, my grandmother used to say, you make plans and God laughs. I never planned my life to be that I'm beloved for telling people to go fuck themselves. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of nice.
Is it fair to say that Curb has changed your life?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Any time you're in a hit television series, it changes your life. But just in the opportunities that, like for example, I don't know, off the top of my head, a guest star, a recurring character on Broad City, and I love working with Abby and Alana. I just loved these amazingly brilliant young women who I like to think that in some way I had some kind of mentoring influence on, and it makes me so happy. But I wouldn't have gotten that if not for Curb, probably. Curb put me on the map. I
mean, you had never been in a hit TV series beforehand.
No.
Because
and I lived in New York.
Right.
I wasn't like out there chasing it so much.
But it was clearly worth the wait, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be on a show that I actually am proud of, and I mean, I could have been on, there's a million. I could have been on some crap sitcom all these years and making shitloads of money, and that would have been okay. There's nothing wrong with making money, but to be on a show that I actually am so proud of and that I would watch and that is iconic, I mean, it's amazing. And, I thank Larry every day.
What was it like to go back for season 9?
Oh, man. I remember the moment he called me to tell me we were done after 8. And I went into a deep, deep depression because not so much that I wasn't going to work or make the money or anything like that, but I felt like I had to say goodbye to this character who I loved. So I love Susie Green. And I felt like I had to say goodbye to her, and it felt like a death. And also say goodbye to her relationships with Larry and Jeff and Cheryl and, So I went into a depression. It got, for maybe about 7 or 8 months, I was in a depression about it. Not like a deep, dark depression, but just a mourning, like a grieving is a better term than depression, I think. Because I felt like something died, which it did. So then, 6 years later that we're back, it's like, no, we didn't skip a beat. It was like nothing changed.
I've often thought that when Larry finally says goodbye to the show, we need a one-woman Susie Essman show on Broadway, though, just for a limited run, just so she can tell us all the things that, we wouldn't be able to hear in seasons 10, 11, 12,
Could
and
be,
others.
but I don't know when he's going to be done. Just what just happened is proof that, he told me he was done definitively. Although I kind of really thought that he wasn't.
What made you think that?
Just knowing Larry and I think he likes doing Curb better than anything else he's ever done. That's my sense. I don't know. I never asked him that question, but I know what he's like on set and how much fun he's having. I think writing the outlines can be really brutal for him because it's just so hard. But once they're done and once we're on set shooting, I think I know what a great time he has. He has a ball. We all do. We laugh all day.
I think people underappreciate also the amount of freedom that Larry, he was the showrunner on Seinfeld, but that's nothing compared to what he has on Curb, particularly given the long leash HBO gives him.
And HBO is a great network to work for.
Have you ever gotten a note from HBO?
Me personally, no.
Right.
No, and I don't think Larry ever has either, but you would have to ask him that, but I don't think so. Larry's so unusual. He didn't take notes from NBC, which is unheard of. Well, all I could tell you is I was in LA last week for the TCAs, the Television Critics Association, and I was talking to a lot of the HBO executives. They are thrilled we're coming back.
Oh, I'm sure. Is it kind of an outlier of sorts in terms of the 8 seasons beforehand?
No,
okay.
It's the same. One of the questions they kept asking us at the TCAs, which is a question that irks me, how have your characters changed over the past 6 years? We haven't. We're still the same. That's comedy. You don't change and grow. You make the same mistakes over and over again.
I definitely do not want Susie Green to have an arc. I don't want there to be a moment where, this is what it's all about.
Frampton made, every week went after the same crazy schemes. He didn't learn from his mistakes. That's comedy.
And by the way, with Ralph, there is no baby, you're the greatest, unless she's put up with everything that he's done for the millionth time.
Exactly. And the minute she files for divorce, it's over.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this Origins original. Please be sure to subscribe to Origins for new chapters every month, along with other Origins originals and Origins conversations. Thanks so much. For Origins, I'm Jim Miller.